In a small mountain village called Baekhamri, nestled deep in the Korean countryside, Nurse Lee Hye-jin worked long hours at the community health center. Every morning, she would walk past the same old mining trucks rumbling down the mountain, carrying loads of coal that kept the town alive but slowly poisoned its air. Hye-jin had been working here for 12 years, and she knew every family in Baekhamri by name. Their children were like her own. But something was different this autumn. Children who used to run and play in the rice fields now sat quietly in their homes, breathing heavily. Parents brought them to Hye-jin with worried faces, describing the same strange symptoms. Their kids would wake up gasping for air, their skin would break out in painful red patches, and most troubling of all, they could barely speak above a whisper. 7-year-old Kim Jun-ho was the first. His mother, Mrs. Kim, carried him into the health center on a Tuesday morning. "He was fine yesterday," she cried, tears streaming down her face. "This morning he woke up and couldn't breathe properly. Look at his skin." Jun-ho's little arms were covered in strange markings that looked like tiny burns. Within a week, 12 more children showed up with identical symptoms. Park Min-ji, age 9, who used to sing beautiful songs at the town festivals, now could only whisper. 11-year-old Choi Young-soo, the fastest runner in his class, struggled to walk across the room without gasping. Their parents were terrified, and Hye-jin felt helpless. She called the district hospital, but they had no answers. The doctors there had never seen anything like it. They ran tests, took blood samples, and did x-rays, but everything came back normal. "It must be a virus," they said. "Keep them hydrated and wait for it to pass." But Hye-jin knew better. She had noticed patterns. All the affected children lived on the eastern side of town, closest to the mining operation. They all played in the same areas where trucks passed daily. Their symptoms got worse on days when the wind blew directly from the mine toward the village. When she mentioned her concerns to Dr. Nam Gil-soo, who occasionally visited from the city, he shook his head dismissively. "You're imagining connections that aren't there," he told her. "Mining has been going on here for 50 years. If it was dangerous, we would know by now." The mining company, Taesun Industries, sent a representative to the village when word started to spread. Mr. Han Byung-woo, a man in an expensive suit, stood in the village square and promised everyone that their operations were completely safe. "We follow all government regulations," he announced. "These illnesses must be caused by something else. Perhaps the children caught something from the seasonal flu." But the village elders weren't convinced. Old Mrs. Yoon, who had lived in Baekhamri for 80 years, approached Hye-jin one evening. "I've seen the mountains change color since that mining started," she whispered. "The streams don't run as clear as they used to. Something is very wrong." As days passed, more children fell ill. The village school had to close temporarily when half the students couldn't attend. Parents were taking time off work to care for their sick children, and fear spread through Baekhamri like a dark cloud. Hye-jin started keeping detailed records of every case. She photographed the children's symptoms, documented when they got sick, where they lived, and what they had been doing before falling ill. She interviewed worried parents, noting that many mentioned their children had been playing near the water pipes that ran from the mining site. Late at night, after finishing her rounds, Hye-jin would study maps of the village, marking where each sick child lived. The pattern was undeniable. They formed a clear line following the path of underground water sources that connected to the mining area. She tried to contact environmental authorities, but her calls went unanswered. The local government officials dismissed her concerns, afraid that any investigation might force the mine to close. For a town where almost every family depended on mining jobs, that possibility was unthinkable. The mining company increased security around their facilities and posted signs warning people to stay away. When reporters from the regional newspaper visited, company officials gave them a tour of their state-of-the-art safety equipment, but refused to let them take water or soil samples. Meanwhile, the children's condition worsened. Little Jun-ho now needed help to walk from his bed to the bathroom. Min-ji hadn't spoken above a whisper in 3 weeks. Young-soo's parents carried him everywhere because walking exhausted him completely. As autumn turned to winter, desperation grew in Baekhamri. Parents gathered in the village center every evening, sharing stories and fears. What if our children never recover? They asked each other. The mining trucks continued their endless trips up and down the mountain, and with each passing day, hope seemed as distant as the snow-capped peaks surrounding their village. Hyojin knew she had to do something before it was too late. The children were running out of time, and the adults who could help them seemed determined to look the other way. That cold December night, Nurse Lee Hyojin couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about young Park Minji, who had spent the day struggling to breathe while her mother held her close, both of them crying silently. 16 children were now sick and nobody seemed to care except the families who watched their children suffer. At 2 a.m., Hyojin picked up her phone. Her hands trembled as she opened her camera app. She had never made a video like this before. She wasn't good with technology, but desperation gave her courage. She pressed record and started speaking in a shaky voice. My name is Lee Hyojin, and I'm a nurse in Baekamri village. Our children are dying and nobody will listen to us. Please, someone out there must care about what's happening here. She held up photos of the sick children that their parents had given her permission to share. Her voice broke as she talked about each one. This is Choi Young-soo. He used to run faster than all his friends. Now he can barely walk. This is Kim Jun-ho. He's only 7 years old. Look what's happening to his skin. The words poured out of her. She told the world about the mining company, about the government officials who wouldn't listen, about parents who worked double shifts to pay for treatments that weren't helping. We've tried everything. We've called everyone we know. Nobody will help us because we're just a small village that nobody cares about. With tears streaming down her face, she finished. Please don't let our children become another forgotten tragedy. Share this video. Tell someone. Help us. She tagged every news station, celebrity, and organization she could think of, then hit post. Exhausted, she put down her phone and fell asleep on her couch, still wearing her work clothes. When her phone buzzed 6 hours later, Hyojin almost ignored it. But then it kept buzzing. And buzzing. She picked it up with tired eyes and gasped. The video had 100,000 views. Before she could process that number, it refreshed to 150,000. Then 200,000 comments were flooding in from all over the world. Messages in Korean, English, Spanish, Chinese. People were sharing the video with messages like, "This breaks my heart and someone please help these babies." A hashtag had formed. War Save BCAM Children. Kim Jun-ho's mother called her, crying with excitement and confusion. Hyojin, my phone won't stop ringing. People from Seoul are calling me, asking how they can help. What happened? By noon, the video had reached 1 million views. Hyojin's phone died from all the notifications and she had to borrow one from the health center. News crews were already driving toward the village. A famous actress named Song Hwa-young had shared the video with her 5 million followers, adding, "These children need us now." But it wasn't just celebrities. Regular people were sharing the video and adding their own messages. A taxi driver in Busan shared it saying, "I'm a father too. This could be my children." A college student in Daegu wrote, "I don't have money, but I can share this so others can see." An elderly man from Jeju Island posted, "In my 70 years, I've never seen anything this heartbreaking." The mining company tried to control the damage. They released a statement saying the illnesses were unrelated to their operations and demanded the video be taken down for spreading false information. But their statement only made people angrier. International news outlets picked up the story. The BBC called it, "The Village Mining Companies Want You to Forget." CNN ran a segment titled, "When Children's Cries Echo Around the World." A documentary filmmaker from Germany announced she was flying to Korea to investigate. Politicians who had ignored Hyojin's calls suddenly wanted to talk. The Minister of Health announced an immediate investigation. Environmental groups that had been fighting similar cases in other countries reached out with legal support. Most importantly, donations started pouring in, small amounts from ordinary people around the world. A retired teacher from Japan sent $50 with a note, "For the children's medicine." A student from Canada donated her textbook money. Families from the Philippines and Vietnam, facing their own environmental struggles, sent what they could. But perhaps the most touching response came from children. Kids from schools around the world made videos in support. A 9-year-old boy from Denmark held up a hand-drawn picture of mountains and children playing, saying, "I hope you get better soon." Children in Australia organized a bake sale for Beckham Ree. A class from Mexico sent a box of handmade Get Well cards. Within 48 hours, everything changed. Hyejin's simple, desperate video had created a worldwide movement. She stood in the health center, surrounded by ringing phones, piles of donations, and news crew requests, feeling both overwhelmed and hopeful. For the first time in months, young Park Minji's mother grabbed Hyejin's hands, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. "Someone finally heard us." For the first time since this nightmare began, Hyejin smiled. The cry for help had been heard, and help was coming like thunder across the sky. The morning after Hyejin's video reached 5 million views. The quiet mountain roads of Beckham Ree were no longer quiet. Vans and cars with news station logos lined the narrow street leading into the village. Reporters and camera crews set up equipment near the health center, their cables snaking across the ground like mechanical roots. Park So-jun, who ran the village's only convenience store, couldn't believe his eyes. He had seen maybe 3 or 4 strangers in town each month. Now there were dozens. "They're buying all my instant noodles," he told his wife, bewildered but pleased by the unexpected business. The first medical team arrived at dawn. Dr. Kang Bo-ra from Seoul National University brought 2 of her colleagues and a van full of equipment. She knocked on Hyejin's door at 6 a.m. "I saw your video," she said simply. "I'm here to help." Within hours, they had set up a temporary clinic in the village hall. These weren't like the other doctors who had dismissed the children's symptoms. Dr. Kang spent 20 minutes with each child, asking detailed questions, taking new types of samples, and actually listening to what Hyejin had observed. "You were right about the patterns," Dr. Kang told Hyejin after examining the first 5 children. "This isn't random. Something in the environment is causing this." She called specialists in environmental toxicology, who promised to arrive. By evening, young Kim Junho's father, Mr. Kim Dong-il, had taken time off work to be with his son. When he saw tears in Dr. Kang's eyes as she examined Junho, he was confused. "Is he getting worse?" he asked, panicking. "No," Dr. Kang replied softly. "I'm crying because I see how much he's suffering, and because I'm angry that it took a video going viral for someone to finally help these children properly." By afternoon, legal experts had arrived. Attorney Lee Mi-kyung, famous for fighting environmental cases, set up an office in the village school. She interviewed parents and documented everything. "We're building a case that will shut this mine down permanently," she told the gathering crowd. But the mining company wasn't giving up without a fight. They sent their own team of lawyers and hired a public relations firm. Company spokesman Mr. Yoon Sang-ho held a press conference at their facility, insisting that independent tests proved their operations were safe. "These allegations are baseless and harmful to our workers and their families," he declared. The village became divided. Some families, especially those who worked at the mine, were scared about losing their jobs. Mr. Choi Hyun-woo, who had worked at the mine for 20 years, argued with his neighbors. "You want to destroy our only source of income over a few sick children?" he said. "What will we eat if the mine closes?" But more evidence kept coming. Environmental scientists from universities around Korea arrived with sophisticated testing equipment. They found dangerous chemicals in the soil near the mine at levels 30 times higher than legal limits. The groundwater that many families used for drinking was contaminated with heavy metals. Engineer Kim Tae-ho from a renewable energy company made an announcement that surprised everyone. "We've been following this story. If the mine closes, we're prepared to build a solar farm here that will create more jobs than the mine ever did." Meanwhile, support kept flowing in from around the world. A group of doctors from Doctors Without Borders sent medicines specifically for the children's symptoms. Students from universities across Korea organized to come to the village as volunteers, but it was the children themselves who captured the world's attention. When reporter Oh Mi-jin interviewed young Park Min-ji, the girl who could once sing beautifully but now could only whisper. Minji said something that made viewers cry around the world. I want to sing again for my grandmother before she's too old to hear me. Social media exploded with support. The hashtag #SaveBaycamChildren reached #1 trending worldwide. Famous musicians started posting songs dedicated to the children. Artists created paintings. Writers composed poems. A powerful moment came when Dr. Lisa Anderson, an American environmental scientist, arrived from California. She had fought a similar case against mining companies in her home state. What happened here is almost identical to what I saw in Nevada, she told the crowd. Except there, it took 20 years before anyone believed the affected families. Here, the whole world believes you in 3 days. The Korean government, under pressure from international attention, finally acted. The Ministry of Environment announced immediate emergency measures. The mine would be temporarily shut down pending investigation. They promised medical treatment for all affected children would be government-funded. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Hee-jin stood outside the health center watching the chaos that had become her village. News trucks, medical, vans, protesters, lawyers, scientists. The quiet mountain town had become the center of a global storm. Old Mrs. Yoon, the 80-year-old village elder, approached her. In all my years, I never imagined the whole world would come to our little village, and she said, but they came because you had the courage to cry out when no one else would listen. As if on cue, thunder rumbled across the mountains. Real thunder. This time, promising rain to wash the polluted air. But Hye-jin smiled, knowing that the metaphorical thunder, the sound of humanity responding, had already begun to change everything. 3 weeks after the video went viral, Baekhyun-ri looked like a completely different place. But the most amazing change wasn't the news vans or the medical equipment. It was what ordinary people from around the world were doing to help. It started with small gestures that grew into something extraordinary. A teacher named Park Jin-ho from Busan received a package at his school. Inside were 50 handmade paper cranes from children in Japan, each with a tiny message of hope in Korean. The Japanese teacher who organized it, Ms. Tanaka, had written, "My grandfather told me how neighbors helped each other during hard times. Today, the whole world is your neighbor." Jin-ho was so moved that he gathered his students to make their own cranes. Soon, colorful paper birds were arriving in Baekhyun-ri from schools across Asia. Young Choi Young-soo, who was getting stronger day by day, spent hours reading each message. "Teacher," he told Hye-jin, "kids from Thailand sent me pictures of elephants. They said elephants remember their friends forever, just like we'll remember everyone helping us." The help came in forms nobody expected. A group of grandmothers from Jeju Island arrived by bus carrying enormous pots and bags of ingredients. "We're here to cook," announced their leader, Mrs. Song Kyung-soon. "You're too busy saving children to worry about meals." They set up a kitchen in the village center and served hundreds of people daily: medical staff, volunteers, reporters, and villagers. From Germany, a retired miner named Klaus sent a detailed technical report exposing similar problems at international mining sites. His work helped the legal team build their case. Along with his report, he included a photo of himself holding a sign that read, "Solidarity from Germany," and a note, "I worked in mines for 40 years. I know the truth when I see it." But perhaps the most touching support came from other affected communities. Families from Minamata, the Japanese town poisoned by mercury decades ago, sent letters of encouragement. "We know your pain," wrote one survivor. "We also had to fight alone for years. You are not alone anymore." Tech workers from Silicon Valley surprised everyone by creating a real-time air and water quality monitoring system for free. Lee Hyun-woo, a Korean-American engineer, led the team remotely. "We can have sensors installed within a week," he told village leaders via video call. "You'll be able to see exactly what's in your air and water every moment." The pharmaceutical company that had promised faster treatment delivery kept their word. Dr. Kim Soo-jin, their head researcher, moved to a temporary lab in nearby Andong City. "We're developing a specific treatment protocol for these children," she explained to reporters. It's not just medicine, it's hope in a bottle. Hollywood got involved too. A famous director announced she would make a documentary about Beckham, with all profits going to the village's recovery fund. This isn't just a Korean story, she said. It's a human story about what happens when people refuse to give up on each other. The mining company tried to fight back, hiring an expensive PR firm to discredit the movement. They spread rumors that the donations were being misused and that the village was exaggerating the health crisis. But their efforts backfired when people saw photos of the sick children improving with proper medical care. International environmental groups arrived with legal expertise. Lawyer James Mitchell from Greenpeace International had fought similar cases in South America. The pattern is always the same, he told the gathered media. Companies deny, delay, and deflect. But here, the global attention makes it impossible for them to hide. The children themselves became symbols of hope. When 8-year-old Kim Min-seo finally spoke above a whistle for the first time in 2 months, saying thank you to Dr. Kang, the video went viral again. Comments poured in from parents worldwide. Hearing her voice made me cry with joy, wrote a mother from Brazil. Our children in São Paulo are sending love to Beckham. Musicians organized benefit concerts. K-pop star Lee So-young visited the village and sang with the children who were well enough to join in. Music heals, she told them. When you're all better, I'll come back and we'll have the biggest concert these mountains have ever seen. The global supply chain shifted in unexpected ways. Small businesses worldwide refused to work with Tayson Industries. A coffee shop owner in Seattle removed Tayson-mined coal from their supply chain, writing on social media, "We'd rather pay more than support child suffering." Universities offered scholarships to Beckham students. MIT promised that any student from the village would receive full funding for engineering studies. These children have experienced the consequences of bad engineering, the dean explained. They should have the chance to become the engineers who prevent future tragedies. The interconnected support created something magical. When a flood threatened the temporary medical facilities, construction workers who had watched the news coverage drove through the night from Seoul to build better structures. We have children too, their foreman explained simply. Local businesses adapted too. The village's elderly barber, Park Yu-nam, found himself cutting hair for reporters and volunteers from around the world. I never imagined my little barber shop would welcome people from 5 continents, he marveled. But here we are, all working together. By winter's end, Beckham wasn't just recovering, it was transforming. The human chain that started with a desperate video had grown into something unprecedented. A global community united by the simple belief that children deserve to breathe clean air and have healthy futures. As spring approached, the village prepared for even bigger changes. The mine was permanently closed, the company faced criminal charges, and cleanup had begun. But most importantly, a network of friendships had formed that would last forever. The world had indeed answered with thunder, and that thunder was the sound of millions of hearts beating as one. 1 year later, Nurse Lee Hee-jin stood in the same health center where this story began. But everything had changed. The morning sun streamed through clean windows onto walls covered with colorful drawings from children all over the world. The sound she heard wasn't the wheeze of struggling lungs or worried whispers. It was laughter. Young Kim Jun-ho burst through the door, his cheeks pink with health, carrying a soccer ball. "Miss Hyejin, did you see my goal at practice?" he exclaimed, his voice strong and clear. His mother followed behind, tears of joy in her eyes. Just a year ago, this same boy could barely walk. "I saw it from here," Hyejin laughed, pointing to the window. "The whole village heard you celebrating." The outdoor soccer field was another gift from their global family, built by volunteers from Brazil who knew something about the beautiful game. The old mining site had been completely transformed. Where toxic pits once scarred the mountainside, a state-of-the-art environmental research center now stood. Dr. Kang Bo-ra, who had rushed to help during the crisis, now led the center's children's health program. "We're not just studying what went wrong," she explained to visiting students. "We're making sure it never happens again anywhere." The solar farm that engineer Kim Tae-ho had promised covered the hills with gleaming panels. It employed twice as many people as the old mine ever did. Mr. Choi Hyun-woo, who had worried about losing his mining job, now supervised a team of solar technicians. "My children breathe clean air, and I still have good work," he told reporters. "I was wrong to oppose the changes." The village school had expanded into a campus that attracted students from around the world. The Beckham-ri International Academy taught environmental science, renewable energy, and community health. Students from Nigeria worked alongside kids from Norway, learning how to prevent environmental disasters in their own countries. Young Park Min-ji, whose whispered voice had broken hearts worldwide, now led the school choir. Her clear, beautiful voice filled the mountains every morning as children sang songs in a dozen languages. "I sing for everyone who helped us," she explained, her eyes sparkling. "Each song is a thank you letter." But with music, the health center had become a model facility. Medical students from Harvard studied alongside those from Seoul National University. They learned not just how to treat patients, but how communities could work together to prevent illness. The monitors developed by those Silicon Valley engineers still tracked air and water quality, now showing consistently clean results. The paper crane project had never stopped. Children worldwide continued sending them to Beckham-ri, and the village sent them back. The crane exchange had grown into sister school programs connecting kids across continents. Choi Young-soo, now healthy and strong, led a team that carefully cataloged each crane and sent photos back to the young creators. Mrs. Song Kyung-soon's volunteer grandmothers had created something special too. The Grandmother's Kitchen became a cooking school where local women taught international volunteers to make traditional Korean dishes. The program was so popular that a cookbook featuring their recipes raised enough money to build similar health centers in 3 other villages. The legal victory had been complete. Taesan Industries paid the largest environmental fine in Korean history. Its executives faced jail time, and the company was forced to fund cleanup operations in 20 other communities. Attorney Lee Mi-kyung used the case as precedent to win similar battles across Asia. But perhaps the most beautiful change was in the children themselves. They had become global ambassadors for environmental protection. When Min-ji sang at the United Nations, delegates from 193 countries stood and applauded. "We learned that children's voices can change the world," she said from the podium. "Now we help other children find their voices too." The medical treatments Dr. Kim Soo-jin had developed were now used worldwide to treat similar poisoning cases. The Beckham-ri protocol had helped thousands of children in mining communities from Peru to the Philippines. Every success was celebrated in the village as if their own children were healing again. On the anniversary of Hee-jin's desperate video, the village held a festival that drew visitors from around the globe. Former patients who had become doctors, engineers, and teachers returned home. Volunteers who had cooked meals, built structures, and offered comfort reunited with the families they had helped. As evening fell, the mountain air carried the sound of children playing games in 12 different languages. The elderly village leader, Mrs. Yoon, now 81, sat surrounded by youngsters from 5 continents. "Tell us again about the time before," they asked her, "when the mountain was gray and children couldn't breathe." She smiled, looking up at stars, visible now that the air was clean. "That was before we learned an important truth," she said. "When one child cries out in pain, the whole world is listening, and when the world decides to help, miracles happen." The old mining trucks were gone, replaced by electric buses carrying researchers, students, and tourists, eager to learn how a small village had taught the world about the power of collective care. The only thunder heard in Beckham-ri now was the kind that brought clean rain to wash the solar panels and water the new forest planted on the mountainsides. Hee-jin touched her phone, the same one she had used to record that desperate plea. Now it was filled with messages from children around the world, all saying the same thing in different languages. "Thank you for teaching us that our voices matter." The clear sky above Beckham-ri reflected the clear promise below, that when humanity chooses hope over profit, when communities choose love over fear, The future becomes as bright as a mountain morning after the storm has passed.